Hi, this is 2Scoops, and welcome to the last part of my tutorial for Sonic Academy. I'm going to be going over how I make my effects, as well as mixing and mastering, and just finalizing the track overall. So first off, I'm going to start off by making a white noise sort of panning riser. Well, it's basically just going to be going during the builds and during transitional. It's just going to be a transitional effect essentially. So first I'm going to load up an instance of Anna 2. So I'm going to pull this up right now. And I'm going to turn off the first oscillator here by just bringing down the voices. And I'm going to load up a white noise in the sampler. So just clicking white noise here. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add just a MIDI clip here. Actually, I'm going to start this by going throughout the entire build. It's sort of optional, but I kind of want to build throughout the entire thing, so I'm just going to extend one note throughout the whole thing and start by adding a saturator here. Let's listen to the sound first. So yeah, I think this needs a little bit of the saturation. So I usually like to start by saturating these sorts of things just to give them more presence. I'm going to just bring this up to 4.50. Let's see, 12. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, so now I'm going to add just an auto filter, just low pass ones, probably starting from about 200 hertz. You can hear a little bit of that. And we're going to be EQing out the low end in this, so basically there's not going to be any frequency clashing, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to just start sweeping this up, cutting it when the instrumental cuts here and right before the drop. So let's just hear what that sounds like. Slowly building. So we can sort of see where this is going. So next, to add to this, to sort of add to the sweeping sound, I'm going to add another auto filter. Some people like to band pass to get the same effect, but I feel like there's more options when you do a low pass first, then a high pass, because then you can kind of automate them at different times and just get different effects from it. So I'm going to sort of do the same sweeping motion here. Not cutting it all the way, but sort of gauge how it's going to sound when it goes up there. So the next, I sort of want this auto pan sort of sound, so it's going to be fluttering between within the stereo field. So I'm going to add an auto pan here and bring the amount up all the way. Actually, let me see. Let's see how that sounds. So I feel like all the way might actually be a little bit much, so I'll bring that down a bit, bring the rate up. Sometimes you can automate the rate to sort of add to the rising effect. And I'll actually do that for the sake of today. So I'm going to start slower, get it faster. So it's going to kind of sound like this. And then cut off at the end. So let's hear how this sounds in the context of everything here. Slowly starting to build with the track. I'm just going to copy this over to the next build. So that sounds good to me. So I already copied that over to the second build. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a saw pitching riser. So it's basically going to be following that same rise, but it's just going to be a sawtooth. So I'm going to load up another instance of Anna 2. and just keep it on the saw, basically the saw wave here, and let's see what octave we're at here. So I'm going to start at a lower octave, and I'm not going to actually do anything within the soft synth here. I'm going to resample, and this is definitely a plausible option depending on the sound that you want for the kind of riser you're doing. So in this case, I'm just going to copy this down here. So let's see. There we are. So I'm going to start by freezing this. And once this is frozen, I'm going to create a new audio track and just manipulate the sound within the audio track. And with doing that, I'm just going to go to Complex Pro mode and start transposing up. Let me go all the way up to +48. So it goes really high because we started at a very low initial note here. So let's just kind of get a feel for how this is going to sound. And you can kind of hear this almost like glitching, degrading kind of sound from what's happening when it's pitching up. And definitely sort of the effect that'll give when you do this sort of thing with pitching up with such an extremist extent. So I feel like that is essentially the sound I want for this riser. You could obviously do the same thing by pitch bending in Anna 2 or in whatever soft synth you're using. But in this case, I just wanted to do the resampling, so it could sound a little more grittier, a little more lo-fi, not lo-fi per se, but just a little lower quality, because I almost like that sound for it, to a degree with this sort of thing. So basically, next I'm going to fade this in. I'm not going to do much to the processing on this one though, just fading it in should do the trick. And copying it over to the next build. I'm actually going to cut this one in half here just so it's it's not building during this post-drop section. It's just building during the actual build. We'll keep this one in here though, because I think that sounds fine. So deleting that. Next, we're going to create a white noise exhaust. So basically sort of like the crash symbol of effects. And the way I'm going to do that is by loading up another Anna 2 and loading up some white noise again. So you can kind of hear it a little bit. You can hear the general concept. We're really going to achieve this by doing a lot of EQing and getting the envelope right here. So as you can tell, it's sort of getting that exhaust sort of sound. So I'm going to EQ this right now. Yeah, that's definitely the sound I want. I'm going to add a reverb just to give a little more to the tail here. Higher sound might be better depending what you want. So yeah, I'm going to start by adding this to the drop here. Yeah, that sounds good. Add a little more to the gain on this EQ here. Can go back into Anna 2, just bring that volume up a little bit. I'm gonna add it to the second drop, and then also going to additionally add the same thing throughout other parts of the track as well. So right here should be good. You done got me feeling full. I got heaters. You done got me feeling full. I got heaters on my damn boat. Just bringing down the volume of that other riser, it's a bit loud. So next I'm gonna add this here. And then none at the end, just because I like how it sort of cuts out here. Next, I'm going to add a secondary white noise riser, just as an additional, just kind of a shorter white noise riser with Anna. With this one, I'm going to just show how you can do sort of everything internally, because I do a lot of external processing. So I'm just going to kind of basically just explain here how you could do it internally as opposed to externally with Anna 2. So I'm going to pull up another instance of white noise. Close this. And so here, what do we have here? Okay, so I'm going to bring down the release on this and load up a bandpass filter. So we're just going to find a bandpass, see what this one sounds like. You can hear that kind of sweeping sound. So I'm going to bring up the drive here so there's more, basically almost like it saturates it essentially. It brings up the gain of the filter. So bringing more presence to the sound. I just want to bring this all the way up. So get it a bit more gritty and a bit more prominent. So just gonna add this in at certain parts. So let's see where we can put this. Obviously at this part right here, but I'm just gonna kind of leave leadway for the rest of the parts that we add. So I'm going to automate this, which is just the bandpass filter cutoff. As you can tell, it's a very good sounding sweep. Move this guy over here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to first off bring this down a bit. Negative 12 decibels. Let's see what we got here. Maybe even more. So I'm just going to be putting this in the second half of the drops as well as the builds and everything else, just because I do sort of want there to be some sort of building element within the drop, bringing it from section to section. Okay, cool. That's sounding good to me. And then lastly, in terms of the effects, I'm going to be adding a reverse crash. I pretty much do this in every song that I make. I'll have a reverse crash going throughout the entire thing. Most prominently in the EDM stuff that I'll be writing. So it's just kind of an easy transitional tool that's very subtle and helps a lot. So I'm going to go to this let's see here. Let's go to this reverse symbol that I have. Where are you? Crash. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I'm going to drag this in. So what I'm going to do with this is actually start off by EQing it and cutting out the lows. And then adding a reverb after it, just so it helps with the tail end of it and doesn't sound so abrupt when it cuts off. Yeah, there we go. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, it feels good. So I'm gonna pretty much just loop this throughout the entire song, going from section to each section. So just duplicate this. So basically, I can see by where certain indicators on parts that I added earlier in the tutorial for this track, like pretty much where each section transitions. So I just know that I could just pretty much duplicate this till the very end. Bring it down. I generally keep my this crash cymbal that I have in particular down 12 decibels on the mixer. So let's see how that sounds. Yeah, so it's just kind of a subtle transition tool. Yeah, it sounds good. So I'm going to actually group all of these together now, just so they can, just so I can process them the same here. So on this group, I'm going to add an OTT just to kind of keep everything level lightly. The amount to 50%. And then similarly to the other ones, which I showed earlier, was I'm going to actually copy the auto filter here and paste it there. So it'll basically just follow what everything else is doing with the builds. And after that, I'm going to be adding an EQ8. Cutting out the low end here. Some of those low mids as well. And then I'll be adding a saturator on the end here. Putting this on soft sine mode, and the drive up to 1.50. Just give it more more processing thing. I'm gonna rename this FX as well, just because I feel like that's proper here. And similarly to everything else besides the drums, I'm going to be adding the effects to the sidechain bus. So it's similarly to all the other ones, just sends only. Bring this all the way up. And I'm stuck in limbo, 'cause that's the shit that I know. And that feels good. So as we can tell here, the mix down actually sounds very good, just because I was, in this case, mixing as I went, as opposed to just mixing afterwards. I know I said in an earlier video that a lot of times I do tend to mix last, but in this case, like I realized I was, mixing as I was going, which does happen a lot, just because it's sort of the instance of the kind of song I'm making, or the sound I'm trying to achieve. Sort of had it in mind this whole time. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to go in with a master, which I generally very lightly master my stuff. It's not, with electronic music, all the sounds are very kind of processed and perfect, and sit in their own sort of sonic spectrum when you mix it well enough. So I'll say my mastering is quite dependent on the mix. And I don't really like to overdo it with a mastering chain. Like a lot of producers I know like to, stack up like compressors and everything on theirs. But personally, I like to keep mine very simple, very just, what it is. So I'm going to start by actually adding, and this isn't the most important thing to do here, but I'm going to start by adding an instance of isotope imager. So, which is basically just ozone 6, but I'm just going to drop in only the imager I personally really like the interface of Ozone as well, so that's why I'm using this version, Ozone 6. So what I'm going to do is bring down the bandwidth here, just so the bass, there's nothing going on in the stereo field, and then I want the low mids to sort of like the 140 to 2K range, just sort of sit where it is in the stereo field. But in band 3 and 4, I want to push those ones up. So I'm going to put this about to 32 and this one to 12, just so it's a bit wider. And I mean, you could push it further or less further or whatever, but yeah.
I'm stuck in limbo, 'cause that's the shit that I know.
I feel like this one's a bit too much, so I'm gonna bring that down.
I'm stuck in limbo, 'cause that's the shit that I know.
That's sounding good. This isn't the most crucial plugin to have. I just personally like using it just to, you know, add more to the width of the mix. Also, a key note that we're going to do from this point on in terms of the rest of this tutorials, I'm going to actually use a utility to shift this to mono. So what's important about mixing in mono is sometimes when you're mixing in stereo, you'll hear the sounds in a certain way that's not true to what's being played out on, let's say, a festival sound system. Because generally, when you're at a festival, you hear the songs in just mono. So it's good to know what's going to sound good on the sound systems. So generally, that's why I like to make sure that all the levels are in their proper place while just keeping everything in mono, keeping the volume low on whatever I'm listening to, whether or not it's headphones or studio monitors. I just find it's important to keep a low volume because something that someone told me a while ago is if it sounds good quiet, it'll sound good loud on a general standpoint. So keep it in mono, keep the volume down low, just to check, just to test the mix down here. This actually sounds pretty great on average, being just where everything's sitting in mono. So what I'm going to do next is actually more of an effector for the builds. Not as much of a mastering thing here, but I'm going to throw another utility on here. And something that a friend of mine showed me a while ago in a session was he really likes to, and it's something I started to really like doing too, is basically dropping down the width of the track at the builds. So when it does drop, the full wideness of the mix will just hit you. And it creates, it's almost like a very subtle stereo field effect. You won't hear it while things are sitting in mono, but it's basically just a good little trick that I like to use for people that listen in cars and they listen on their headphones, which is a lot of the audience here. So I'm just gonna add this, going down to about maybe about 50. Yeah, we'll say there. And then again, I'm just going to automate this on and off just so it's a bit easier to push forward here. And then I'm going to copy and paste this to the second build as well. It's basically what we can hear here by turning off the mono is going to be this.
Stay on that light, stay like I'm stuck in limbo, 'cause that's the shit that I know.
So basically, it's just adding more climax and more dynamic to the stereo range within the mix. So next, I'm going to actually, and a lot of people will criticize me for this, but I assure you, this is a standard amongst literally every producer that makes bass music right now. And I'm not going to hate on those who don't do it because it's totally improper in terms of traditional mixing and mastering. But I've had numerous conversations with numerous top producers pretty much that all do this sort of trick. Well, not really trick. It's just kind of like something that people have figured out in the past few years, which is I'm going to actually clip my master. And the reason why I'm going to do this, okay, versus using a limiter here, because I personally don't like using limiters as much anymore, because I found that pretty much with every limiter, and there are actually a few great limiters that, ironically enough, I brought in a limiter while saying that. So I'm actually just going to drag in a utility. So basically, what I found with limiters, though, the problem with limiters is that when you put it on the master, a lot of the times it'll squash the sound or over almost too, like, squash the sound too much and mud up what's inside the mix and won't keep a true dynamic to the sound of what you're doing. So what I've found is that just by simply running gain into the master from a good mix will create these clipping harmonics that just almost complement the sound of this style of music. And again, everything's subjective, and this is just what I like to do. This is what I found, actually, guys like, I believe Hero Bust would do, just because the sound of his mix sort of sounds like that. And overall, this sort of song does pretty much sound a lot like Hero Bust sort of feel. So, you know, I was kind of studying his mix downs and studying guys like Joyride's mix downs, and even guys like Virtual Riot, who I've personally talked to, and he says he does this as well. So basically, I'll probably be criticized for this, but it's just what I like doing, and it's what I found a lot of my friends do. So, and I like doing it too. So it keeps a lot of the dynamic within the mix, as you can probably tell. So what I'm going to do is simply, with the utility, push it up 1.50 decibels, and all that's going to do is, as you can tell by the meter here, clip it to about +8 decibels. And I've had friends that have clipped snare transients to like +18 decibels, something crazy. I've done that too before, but you know, I feel in this case, in the sound I'm doing with this one, it sounds good as is. Pretty much every DAW has its own kind of clipping algorithm, and when you run it through that, it basically prevents, like, for example, this master channel right here works in such a way where it prevents sounds from distorting. Unless you run it through hard enough in a certain way. But if you're able to get a clean enough mix down, the reason why this works is just because it's basically preventing every sound from just all distorting at once, and it pretty much works as a clipper. That's what it is. It's not just freely just outputting audio just into the abyss of your computer, you know, and just distorting like crazy. So that's why I don't know, I've just found this to work for me, and I personally like it. It's definitely the way, if you're trying to win the loudness war, it's the way to win the loudness war. Just putting that on the table right now. Don't know if this is a producer secret or something, because it's pretty ignorant if you ask me. So lastly, just almost as an effector at the end here, so you can tell this is sort of just almost like static ending here. I'm gonna add a bit crush, basically, or redux is what Ableton Live calls it. So with that being said, I'm going to just keep it on the hard setting here, with the down sample, and I'm going to slowly just bring this down just a little bit, not too much, and at the end here just sort of filter it back up. Yeah, so.
Booties on the floor, drink a 40 in my dough. Did that fade and now we know.
So I'm gonna end up by taking this off here, and we're just gonna take a quick listen through some of this.
Got me feeling full. I got heaters on my dash when we swiping up that cash. 40s on the floor, drink a 40 in my dough. Hit that fade and now we know. Chillin' stuck in limbo. Limbo slice, drop that shit like Mike. I know flex like David Ike. See no ET swipe is Mike. I stay on that light, I stay icy like, I'm stuck in limbo, cause that's the shit.
is sounding pretty good from my end of things.
I got heaters on my dimples. I stay on that light, baby. I stay mixy like I'm stuck in limbo. 'Cause that's the shit that I know. Swiping up that cash. Booties on the pinball slice. Drop that.
So everything's sounding pretty good to me in terms of the mix down and the master. Obviously, you know, everything's subjective. You know, certain things could be turned down, certain things could be turned up, certain things could be compressed harder, etc., etc. This concludes my tutorial with Sonic Academy. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Noah, also known as 2Scoops, and yeah, thank you so much. Peace.